Coming up on today's podcast, copper peptides, active noise cancelling and active noise reducing earbuds, non-LED bulbs and blue-blocked USB nightlights, movement, cold water swimming, Wim Hof, homemade Prolon fasting mimicking diets, and loads more.
Hi, I'm Tony. I'm an author, presenter at Sky Sports, and years ago I went to the jungle and got ill. Very ill. So this is my podcast adventure to find more energy. It's packed with biohacking, science, health tech, supplements, and some of the most well-known experts on the planet.
This is something I spent 4 months of my life doing with electrodes glued to my head so that you can do a lifetime worth of meditation.
Decide what you don't give a fuck about, which is something you don't care about.
Some of it gets quite out there.
I had some stem cells sent up to my house that I had stored, and then I injected myself with mannitol.
And we even hack hangovers.
Alcohol is poisonous. So is water and oxygen in the wrong dosage.
So that's my podcast, Zestology. Live life with energy, vitality, and motivation.
Oh, this podcast has been a total odyssey to record. And to be quite honest, I'm sick of it. But I'm going to get in the zone. And that's because this is the fourth time that I've tried to record this podcast. I bought these, I love these Rode microphones, R-O-D-E microphones. And I bought a microphone that works specifically with the iPhone. And I recorded the whole podcast yesterday and then listened to it and it didn't work. And then I've recorded a part of the podcast today twice. And it just, when I say it didn't work, the sound quality wasn't good enough. So now I am aware that it sounds a little bit like I'm in a toilet. And I'm in a small meeting room and there are loads of people around. You can probably hear them in the background. But this time, I'm not using the fancy microphone. I'm just using the iPhone. So there you go. You live and learn. And I thought I'd cracked it with this microphone, but I haven't. And that is possibly the last time I'm going to be using it. Because it's wasted me a lot of time. But anyway, enough of my microphone travails. I can be a bit of a microphone geek when it comes to it. But let's move on to what is definitely one of my favourite podcast episodes. I really enjoy doing these hacks episodes, these biohacks episodes. And today I'm going to be looking at some of the things that I've been trialling out over the last few months and weeks. And I'll give each one a Zest rating out of 5 as well. I'm very lucky and very privileged to be in this position where I have this podcast and I speak to all these experts and they recommend all these things for me to try out. And I'm also lucky to have a wife that doesn't think I'm a completely crazy and sort of tolerates tolerates all my experiments in my personal life laboratory. And the first thing that I'm looking at today is copper peptides. Copper is something that exists naturally within our bodies, and there is a direct correlation apparently between copper peptides and many degenerative diseases. And it turns out copper peptides are being used specifically in 2 areas, the skin and hair regeneration. And I haven't been using it for hair regrowth. I'm not follically challenged, thankfully, but I have been trying it for the skin. And I think I spoke about this on the podcast in September, October maybe, and you may have been thinking, well, how's he getting on? Did it work? You may not have been, but you may have been. So I wanted to come back with a little report. Now, the idea is that these studies show that copper peptides not only promote collagen and elastin production, but also promote the production of a family of carbohydrates that maintain and support collagen and elastin. And if you go online, you might be doing this as I speak, because I know a lot of people have been very interested in this. Looking online for copper peptides, you'll find that skin solutions with copper peptides in them cost a lot of money. It's hard to find anything for under $100 or £100, but I did find The Ordinary, which is a great skincare brand and natural and great ingredients and very affordable as well, have a product called Buffet Plus Copper Peptides 1%, I think that's what it's called. I've been using that since September or October, and I think it's sort of working. I mean, as with everything in this world, nothing is a miracle cure, and you shouldn't pin all your hopes on one thing. But my wife, Faith, said to me the other day, I've been meaning to say, your skin's looking pretty good. And I looked in the mirror, and I have to admit, I think it is actually. One of the things that I talk about quite a bit is histamine intolerance on this podcast, and histamine intolerance symptoms often include skin issues such as a reddening of the skin, and I think that my skin has a little bit less pigmentation than it used to, and I think it is looking pretty good. It comes as a sort of blue gloopy serum, and you only need about 3 drops, which you smear on your face, and then you can use a moisturiser afterwards. And I do like it. I'd be very interested to know if you use it for your skin or for your hair. And the Ordinary's product is just for skin, I think, not hair. But there's one more thing to say, and that is that there are various contraindications in moisturisers. So if you do start using copper peptides, the internet is rife with reviews from people who've said, oh no, I've used the copper peptides and then I've used a moisturiser with, I don't know, vitamin C in it or something, and my skin has broken out a sort of coppery colour. So I think that is something to look forward to, but I haven't had that luckily because I read the instructions, which I don't normally do, but I did this time. So look, copper peptides, I'm going to carry on using it, and I give the Ordinary's Buffet Plus Copper Peptides 1% a 4 out of 5 Zest rating. Now at this point, because I've had my fingers burnt so many times recording this podcast, I'm going to stop and I'm just going to see if everything's going okay. And it's a shame because, you know, with my other microphone, the sound quality would have been just 100%. As it is, I know it sounds a little bit echoey in here, but as long as we're recording okay, I'll be back in a sec with active noise cancelling and active noise reduction earbuds. Breaking news, we're back, we are good, we're recording, and I'm still in my little meeting hole. I mean, it is a meeting hole, and I might even get kicked out in 10 minutes, which might be interesting. There are sort of interesting noises coming in left, right and centre, but that's part of the fun of this podcast, recording it out and about. Let's move straight on to my next hack then, which is Quieton active noise cancelling and active noise reduction earbuds. I've been trying these out. They've already featured on the podcast, and I'm going to be speaking to them in more detail soon. Now, these are earbuds that use exactly the same theory of noise cancelling headphones, but in tiny little earbuds. They don't connect via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. They're just standalone products that you take out of the box and put in your ear, and they work particularly well. They really do make it almost silent when you put them in your ear. The way it works is just like noise cancelling headphones, and it sort of sounds so elaborate. It's got a microphone on each earbud to sample the sound and a speaker to create a phase shifted sound that cancels the original sound. It's an amazing concept, isn't it? Now, I've been using these at night, on the nights that I don't have to look after my 2-year-old, or sort of listen out for him in case he's shouting out, because we sort of split that out. And I think they work very well. My question with these earbuds is around electromagnetic fields. Are there electromagnetic fields in these earbuds? Because they don't connect via Bluetooth, and they don't connect via Wi-Fi. You don't need an app or anything to be using them. But there is clearly an electrical component of some description in them. A power description. You've got these microphones in the earbuds sampling the sound of them and putting it through. So I'm going to speak to the company and ask them about it, but I have already emailed and they insist that the electromagnetic fields are very low. And I think this is something that the self-respecting biohacker would like to have in his or her armory. I think they're good. I mean, I really do. I do think that earbuds are a great solution when you've got issues with noise, and sleep is the absolute number one hack, isn't it? So anything you can do to improve your sleep is important. And I like them a lot. So I'm going to give them a Zest rating of 4 out of 5. I do still want a little bit more information on the electromagnetic fields. And the other thing that I do want to tell the company is that this is a product that is clearly being used at night. And yet when you take them out of the box, there's a very bright white light that shines in your eyes. So I would like them to make that a blue blocked orange light, and that'd be even better. Talking of light, I'm going to have a sip of my drink and then move on to the lighting in your home. Now, we moved into our new home about 2.5 years ago. And we were very lucky to buy what could only be described as a doer-upper, and then work with my mate, who is a builder. And he went and lived there for 9 weeks and top to bottom stripped it all out. We sort of started from scratch, and that was the only way we could afford that home. But also it meant we were able to design it to our specifications. And that was a great idea until 9 weeks in, when the money ran out. So we'd done everything that we wanted to do, but all the flourishes and the nice touches have been added to bit by bit over the last couple of years whenever we found an extra fiver down the back of the sofa. And one of the things we hadn't got round to until now, that's an interesting noise, isn't it? One of the things we hadn't got around to until now was looking at the lighting, especially in the kitchens, and very bright white lights. Now, I've been speaking to Dave Asprey in the past and other experts about the quality of your light and how important it is. And he is absolutely adamant that LED lighting is not particularly good for you. And I realised that all the spotlights in the kitchen were firstly very bright white light and also LED lights. And I never felt that relaxed in the evenings until I switched those lights off. So I did a little bit more research. It turns out that newer LED lights lack many of the sun's frequencies that our bodies and brains need. With artificial lights, we've eliminated most of the infrared, red and violet light found in natural sunlight. And then the problem is that this, what they call junk light, makes things even worse in the evening when you're expecting a much more sort of orange glow. Your brain is hardwired over millions of years of evolution to require a much more circadian orange glow in the evening, and that is a recipe for sleep disorders and potentially bad sleep as well. So Dave and others say it's time to break up with white LEDs and compact fluorescents, and that is what I did. Now, what is his solution? He says, firstly, candlelight or Himalayan salt lamps. We have got quite a few Himalayan salt lamps around the home, but we wanted to sort out the kitchen lights, but we couldn't put Himalayan salt lamps in there or candlelight. So took out the white LEDs and bought halogen lights and went from bright white to warm white, and from 4,000, I think it's lumen, to 2,700. So really very different. And it is so different. And do you know how I know that it's so different? I left one of the original bulbs in to test, and then I stood under the halogen lights, the warm white lights, and just felt differently to how I felt when I stood under the bright LED light. If you're not fully on board with many of the principles of zestology, you might be listening to me banging on about the different frequency of light now and thinking, what on earth is he talking about? If you are on board with this, you'll get it. And the difference is massive. You know, the quality of the light that we receive really does have an impact on our energy during the day and our sleep at night. And this podcast is all about energy. If you want an example of that, just spend the whole day in a dark room with the curtains drawn and then see how you sleep at night. You need decent sunlight during the day. You need good quality bright light during the day, and then very dim, soft lighting at night, such as the Himalayan salt lamps, the candlelight, or next best thing, the halogen spotlights. So I would encourage you to certainly investigate where you've got LEDs in your house. LEDs are much more popular now than halogen lights, and halogen lights do wear out quicker, but the quality of this LED light, a number of light experts that I've spoken to do describe this as junk light. So you may want to look at the junk light in your house. And I'm honestly going to give these new halogen lights, the warm white lights, a 5 out of 5 rating. It's so simple. What did it cost me? £10 to change the LEDs in our kitchen to 8 halogen spotlights. And it made a huge difference to how I feel in the evening in my kitchen. But I do realise that if you're not a zestologer, this may sound utterly ludicrous, and that's fine. I'm comfortable with that. On a light theme, Our 2-year-old is, he's a wonderful sleeper. Or he has been until October, when we went on our honeymoon and we all shared a room together. And he got a bit of a taste for being in the same room as mummy and daddy. And he hasn't been quite such a good sleeper since. And who can blame him? It's nice to sleep in the same room as other people, isn't it? And one of the things that he's asked for since then, and thank goodness that he can now talk to us and tell us what he wants, because it really does make things a lot easier, is having a light on in the room. And we've got this fantastic USB blue blocked nightlight. And weirdly, they're very hard to find. There are all manner of companies selling blue blocking glasses now. And I noticed that my friend Luke Stories started a blue blocking glasses company called Gilded, with some very stylish glasses. And he's obviously been on the podcast a few times. But it is hard to find blue block night lights that plug into a USB port. We have them from this site called lowbluelights.com, and we ship them in from America, and they are brilliant. These are such a good product. You cannot find anything simple on Amazon. Why, I don't know. But I interviewed Edward Carome on, I think it was one of the first 10 podcasts we ever did on Zestology. An incredibly talented, kind and intelligent man who gave us the benefit of 50 years of his research as a physicist, a career professor and a researcher at John Carroll University, and an inventor as well, who helped start up lowbluelights.com. And he sent me one of these lights, and it was so good we bought more of them, and now we leave one of these low blue lights on. I'd highly recommend you look into these low blue lights if you want a different option for lighting in the evening that isn't halogen bulbs or Himalayan salt lamps, and especially if you want to leave a night light on at night. And I intend to buy more. And when you go to the site, look for the gooseneck sleep light. And one final word on that, and that is that whilst researching this podcast today, sadly, I found out that Edward Carome has since died, since we spoke to him in 2015. It's fair to say that he lived a very good and rich life, and he was 94 years old. And clearly, having looked at some of the tributes online, was much loved in all the different areas of his life, and a huge amount of things that he achieved in his life as well. So just wanted to pay tribute to Edward Carome and sort of mark his passing. And he was an excellent guest on Zestology and lived to a good age as well, didn't he? So 94, and as well as being an inventor and a career professor and a physicist, he also had lots of interests such as sort of traveling and art and all the rest of it. And that came across in the interview as well. A couple of other things that I've been looking at very quickly. We've been looking at cold water therapy quite a bit on the podcast and in my life. On New Year's Day, I went for a swim in the sea, and it was rather cold. And if you go to my Instagram, or if you've been following me on Instagram, you will have found out that on New Year's Day, there were 6 adults and 5 kids, and we all piled into a car and went down to the beach in Devon, and we all got into the water. And the kids did as well, wearing wetsuits. Not mine, he's only 2, he's a bit young for it. But it was so much fun. And look, when I say cold water swimming, it was cold water dips, really. We went in very quickly and got out again. But the exhilaration from getting in the sea and then getting out. And what I couldn't believe was, I felt a bit muggy-headed after a couple of drinks on New Year's Eve, but I felt so clear-headed afterwards that I realised 5 minutes later I was just standing on the beach wearing a t-shirt, feeling perfectly warm. So before that I'd been huddled up in a coat and what have you, and then just t-shirt on, felt absolutely fine after a dip in the sea. Wim Hof is a former Zestology guest, and he is incredible. And I've been looking into his work a lot more since January the 1st, doing a few cold showers, went back for a dip in the sea on January the 2nd as well. Wim holds 20 world records, including a world record for the longest ice bath. And he also climbed up Mount Everest wearing nothing but shorts. And I am, undeniably fairly wuss compared to him. But he's all about the right training and the exercise, strengthening your inner nature and preventing disease and sorting out the breath. And I think, it's my friend James, who I was staying with in Devon, he messaged me a couple of days ago and he was like, mate, seriously, this whole cold water thing, I'm so into it. I've gone to Tooting Lido. It's great. I've got a feeling it's about to explode. Let's have a look at business opportunities. To which I said to him, listen, buddy, I've been talking about this for years on my podcast, and Wim Hof came on about 4 years ago. So he's been on twice, Wim, I think. I know a lot of people do it already, but it's at the start of the year, you do start to reassess, don't you? And I definitely needed a bit of a reset at the start of the year, and I undoubtedly feel a lot better now than I felt 2 weeks ago at the start of the year. So you may want to look up the Iceman and look up Wim Hof. And I think it's not just cold water swimming as well. One of the things that I spoke about on this podcast a couple of months ago was how we have taken the decision in my company that all our meetings are walking meetings. And it's just working out so well. I've become so attuned to how my brain works. And that is, normally I record these podcasts wandering around, but I did that yesterday and the microphone didn't work. So here I am sat down. And after half an hour of sitting down, I'm going to need to move about. That is now the way that my brain works, and I understand that. And a couple of days ago, we were here in the office. We had a meeting in the morning, and after about 45 minutes, I said to my colleague, Alison, I'm going to have to stop for a while here because my brain can't do any more. I don't know, I do sort of feel like I had mild ADHD at school. I was always bottom of the class. But then we had a meeting at 4:00 in the afternoon and we went for a walk for an hour and we just chatted through ideas. And on that meeting, I felt like the ideas would not flow that well because we weren't in front of a computer screen. We didn't have our notes in front of us. And actually we were extraordinarily creative and I felt very productive as well. And I'm very pleased to say that a podcast coming up either next week or the week after is with the world champion and the world-renowned ultra runner Dean Karnazes, who's been on the podcast before, very well known for his endurance feats. Talking of Wim Hof, I mean, Dean has broken loads of records in endurance, running in 50-degree hot deserts and all sorts of things, where his shoe soles were melting on the asphalt. And Dean told me on this podcast, you'll hear more in a couple of weeks, but Dean told me in this podcast that he does not sit still during the day. He has designed his day so that if he needs to be typing on a laptop, he'll be standing up. Anything that he can dictate, he'll do it while he's running or he's walking. The only time he sits down, he told me, is when he's on an aeroplane. So what about that? So there'll be definitely more of a focus on movement, and we'll chat to Dean next week, and perhaps on cold therapy as well. Now, just before we finish, I did want to mention the Prolon diet, the fasting mimicking diet. The long-term health benefits are unbelievable. I did this 6 months ago and I spoke about it on Zestology, recorded 5 mini podcasts as I was doing it every day. And Faith is doing a homemade Prolon this week. The cost of the Prolon diet kit is expensive. It's about $250, £200, I think. I think there's a small discount if you go onto my website, tonywrighton.com. But it is expensive. And also it is powdered soups. And so Faith's doing it on her own. And I'm going to report back on how she goes on this. Because one of the interesting things about Prolon is that the fasting mimicking diet, basically, your body thinks you're fasting, but you're getting just enough calories to get by. So it's a lot easier than eating absolutely nothing for 5 days, and a lot safer as well. The difficulty with doing it yourself is that Dr. Walter Lungo has collaborated with Prolon to make sure that the macronutrient spread is exactly right. You're getting exactly the right amount of protein and fats and carbs, so your body thinks it's fasting mimicking. Doing it on your own, you might get that wrong. The other thing about doing it on your own is I think that the self-control is harder. Now I'm here in the office today in central London, and Faith's actually coming to meet me, and for her Christmas present I'm taking her to a gallery this afternoon. And then normally we'd probably go for something to eat, but what will happen is we can go for a coffee or something like that, and she can have a cup of tea. But it's harder, isn't it, if you haven't got a box with all the ingredients exactly there so you know what you're doing. But you can DIY a fasting mimicking diet. You have to be quite committed. You don't need fancy equipment or doctor's appointments or anything else. And there's loads of sites that can help you do it. And I will report back on how Faith gets on. But I do think at the start of January, this is one of the topics that's come up a lot. It's a diet of restricted calories over a prolonged period, sort of 4 to 7 consecutive days. And it tricks the body into thinking that you're fasting whilst still providing specific strategic nutrients. So is fasting mimicking? Is it possible to do it without Prolon and without the 250 quid? I will report back. Right, that is pretty much it for now. I did want to talk about supplements as well, and I've been taking Espuladi in the evening, which is like a probiotic, but not quite a probiotic, and acts similarly to a probiotic. And when my gut gets a bit bubbly, I've been taking this in the evenings, and I've had great results. But I think I did want to do a bit of research on Espuladi, the benefits, where people should be cautious about taking it, and I haven't done that. So you may want to do your own research, and I will cover that in more detail on a future podcast because I haven't prepared that enough at the moment. But look, on today's podcast, we have spoken about copper peptides, and I've realised that I haven't given some of these Zest Hack ratings. So copper peptides, I give a 4 out of 5 rating. The Quieton earbuds, I give a 4 out of 5 Zest rating. The non-LED halogen light bulbs, cutting the LED from your life, breaking up with the junk lighting, that's been a huge change. And it's just so much nicer an environment in our house. It's taken us 2 years to do that, 2.5 years, 5 out of 5. The cold water swimming, 4 out of 5. If I could actually stay in there for a couple of minutes, it'd be 5 out of 5. But it just absolutely knocks the wind out of your sails. You get in, you're sort of like, and I know it's all about the breathing, and that's where I need to work on it. But if I could get that good, then we'd be 5 out of 5. And the homemade Prolon, I will come back to you and give it a rating when we speak again. As always, thank you for listening to Zestology. Before we go, I want to tell you what's coming up on Zestology very soon. In the next couple of weeks, Adele Bridges, movement and yoga teacher, Instagrammer as well, with a huge amount of followers and really very talented in the area of hypermobility and flexibility. And she and I met a month or so ago in London and had a great chat, really enjoyed that. Dean Karnazes, that I told you about as well. I'm going to be speaking to one of the experts connected to Prolon as well, because I do think that Prolon has so much to offer, and I really enjoyed doing it when I did it. With everything said about the cost, I want to provide options for people who can't afford it, and for those who can, I want to look into a little bit more what Prolon actually does. So I'll be speaking to Don from Prolon over the next couple of months, as well as an eye expert and Dr. Tam Lewis, who is absolutely brilliant as well. That's all coming up very shortly on Zestology. Thank you for listening. And sorry that the sound quality was a little bit dodgy, but we got there in the end. Have a good week, and I'll speak to you next week.